So, contemplating this matter on the 11th Amendment a little bit more, I did want to discuss this aspect of manufacturing, but just to clear this up with the 11th Amendment, the easiest way for states to default on their debt was by the 11th Amendment. You can't sue us. We owe you money, but you can't sue us, so you can't get the money back. It's kind of ironic because some of these people that are all against central banking, I guess they want to have states make their own, print their own money and have their own banks and all that. What are you going to do when you have the same situation that you're complaining about with Wall Street now? Is there some divine right of the states, that the states exist by divine right and could do no wrong? They're not going to do the same thing that happened with these privateers on Wall Street or wherever else it was. It's the same sort of thing. So you might as well get rid of the 11th Amendment if you're going to do that anyway, or if you're not going to do it. It's a bad idea to, you should, well, I don't even want to get into it. But anyway, I was going to talk about manufacturing. The area I'm from, IBM was here and Endicott Johnson was here. And Endicott Johnson was a shoe factory. It was one of the largest shoe factories in the United States. And my father worked there, and other members of my family. Most of the people that I know that lived around here worked there. And the Johnson family provided different services and things to people that worked for the company. And both are gone now. IBM left and Endicott Johnson left. So the local governments here are having problems with paying for things. The sewage treatment plant collapsed. Now they're wondering who's going to pay for it. Johnson City has no money, so you have on the one hand this progressives that want to incorporate or deincorporate or just dissolve the village and become part of the county or share county services or something. And it's kind of ironic because on the one hand, you have these people that are complaining about, we got to have states' rights. We don't want the federal government interfering in our way of life. Whereas in the state itself, in New York State particularly, if the state government decides we don't like Johnson City anymore, you don't exist, you're not a village anymore, they could do that, and there's nothing anybody could do about it. There's state cases to that effect, and there's Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court cases to that effect. I just think it's kind of ironic. But anyway, the situation that you have when IBM left and Endicott Johnson left, and also other companies left, you don't really have anything here except retailing enterprises. You have large grocery stores, the store Wegmans, huge store, which doesn't allow me to take pictures inside. And you have this other, the Oakdale shopping mall. And essentially what they're doing is they're just middlemen, entrepreneurs, whatever you want to call them, that are just buying things and reselling them from the property. So the money comes in, they skim off the profit, and the money goes out again. Maybe it circulates a little bit among the community, but essentially purchasing the products, selling them, and then paying the money back is gone. It goes out of the community. One of the advantages with manufacturing is that the community itself becomes dependent upon the manufacturing. So like, for instance, when Endicott Johnson was here, it was very unusual to see anybody walking around town not wearing a pair of Endicott Johnson shoes. The same with business, like what businesses locally didn't use IBM equipment. So you have a different sort of relationship there. And as I was discussing in a recent blog of mine, when you build a community that's based on manufacturing, essentially the people that you're importing, immigrants and whatnot, cheap labor, one step above slavery, what you're doing is you're having them, the Supreme Court refers to it as a free contract. You're having them surrender their right to access the earth for their own sustenance in exchange for a manufacturing job. So you have these little barrack-like communities that are built up around that, and no one has any access to the earth. There's no, you know, it's gotten to the point now where nobody even does farming around here anymore. Nobody even grows cow corn around here anymore. So there's absolutely no self-sufficiency at all. Everybody's yard is very small. You know, all the food is imported. Manufacturing goods are all imported. So essentially you have a situation where you have old people, retired people, young people, children. During the Reagan years, another mini baby boom, you know, you got to have them kids, you know, no birth control, no abortion, no none of that stuff. You know, you have a situation where you're importing the necessities of life. Aside from water, we have a water supply here, but essentially you're importing all of the necessities of life to a very great degree, to a geometrical amount far greater than anything that's exported. So there's, like, if you look at it in terms of trade deficits on a local basis, you have this enormous trade deficit. So you have no money coming in. So the point I'm trying to make here is that these people are talking about consolidation of services because they look at it like we'll pay less taxes. That's like the hot chic thing that came about into the Reagan 1980s. You know, do away with taxes. We're really happy. You know, just so we don't have to pay any taxes. They never stop to think that the problem arises from the fact that they're not exporting anything. No value is being created here to exchange for the necessities of life. It's not just this area, though. It's like that in all different areas all over the United States of America. And it's not necessarily because we did away with tariffs. It's partly because the things that were manufactured are obsolete. Or it's because someone else is manufacturing them. Someone from a different part of the country, you know, or they're being imported. So this is something that none of these people ever take into consideration. So there's this person, Ed, that's on MSNBC, and I watch his show sometimes, and he seems like a really nice guy, and he's a good-hearted person, and he's pro-manufacturing. But, you know, there's all sorts of problems that arose and do arise from manufacturing. For instance, the United States has always been a protectionist, has a protectionist mentality. It's not just with tariffs and international trade, it's with domestic trade. It's stock trading, for instance. You know, somebody will get into stock trading and they'll say, well, geez, you know, it's a booming market. If I sell this right now, I make $2,000. But they don't. Rather than being clever and selling it and taking the money and looking at it like, hey, here's $2,000 that I never had before, they'll hold on to it. And then all of a sudden, it goes higher. And, oh, I'm glad I held on to it. I feel real good. You know, they sit back in their chair, and then all of a sudden it goes away. And if they try to sell it, it's less than that $2,000. It's maybe only $500 or something. But still, rather than selling it and taking the money and run, they wait, and it goes down. It'll come back, and it never does, you know. So it's like, on the one hand, those people are not cut out to be stock traders. But on the other hand, why should they be? Is there a necessity for them to do that? I don't believe that there is. But you have that same sort of mentality in terms of manufacturing. Somebody manufactures something, a community is built up around it. And rather than people looking at is this product actually a need anymore? They try to force it to be a need. And that's one of the problems it's created. You know, for instance, a shoe factory. What does a shoe factory need in order to be successful? It needs a hell of a lot of people walking around that don't have any shoes, or, and this is the important part, people have shoes that don't last very long, and they have to keep buying them. And that's one of the things that happens in the United States, is that when you have manufacturing concerns, the longer that they go, and the more you make of something, the less the quality is going to be. For instance, you could have a house and you could have glass blowers blow all the windows and have the most fabulous windows known to man, and, like, you know, fashion a thing like Thomas Jefferson's home with all of these nifty doors in it and everything. But when you try to mass produce those things, no matter how well you try to mass produce them, the quality is going to be lessened. You know, it's just a diseconomy of scale. You reach a point where something has reached its zenith, and then after that, the quality of it, the marginal utility of it, begins to diminish. The law of diminishing returns. So this is one of the things that people aren't looking at in terms of manufacturing. On the one hand, it's a good thing because you're taking raw materials, and you're adding value to it. But on the other hand, if you don't balance that with some degree of self-sufficiency, what you end up with is you end up with these communities that are bound to fail. They're just bound to die. And that's the situation that the United States is in. And the problem is one of planning. Because the United States does not have a centrally planned government, none of these things are ever centrally planned. The closest you ever get to it is with zoning. But still with zoning, all that they do is they say, okay, residents over here, manufacturing over here, retail over here, you know, single-family districts, and so they divide these sectors up, but they don't determine what goes on in there. They don't have that form of extensive planning. That is one of the problems that I see with the United States. And again, you have these conservatives, we're not going to have central planning. We're not going to plan things in any kind of... You're going to have a bunch of people running into each other. You're not going to be able to solve this with any sort of market mechanism or anything like that, you know. So one of the solutions that I propose is that you have government, to a limited degree, adopt a form of central planning. For instance, I get my rice from a family farm, Lundberg, in California. Top shelf, excellent product. The government could get together with them and say, okay, what is the maximum amount of production? You know, how much could you produce at the same quality that you have now? And go around to different producers like that and arrange for these people to provide subsistence. These are the means of subsistence to people. And you develop technologies around this. You have a form of technology that rather than having some sort of a gadget to play games on, you have technologies developed that are for people, that are actually to benefit people. And you can't get any more basic than with food. You know, what I started to say was, on the one hand, you have places like the Cato Institute that are saying we want to do away with agricultural subsidies, which is essentially you're going to wind up doing away with farms. You're going to have these chemical companies like Monsanto producing chemical food. You know, it's like, this is your way to escape from Earth. You no longer need Earth for sustenance. Monsanto will take care of it, you know. I don't think that that's the way to go. You want to keep things as natural as you can. It's limited with the more people that you have. But if you look at it in terms of people first, and you develop and organize and plan things like this with food so that it's designed for people first, and that what trickles down from that, the profits that arise from that, trickle down. Let that trickle down to business. But let these people provide